The Iranian president has met with his Nicaraguan counterpart in Managua as part of his three-nation Latin American tour. Ebrahim Raeisi and Daniel Ortega have pledged to boost bilateral relations.
We have always said and repeated that we are twin revolutions with deep roots in the defense of our identity, in the defense of the welfare of our peoples.
Our relationships are not the usual traditional relationships. They are completely strategic relationships. We want to increase and deepen our relations in all areas, political, economic, and cultural, and in all areas, especially in science and technology.
The Iranian president also touched upon U.S. hostile approaches toward his country and Nicaragua. He said that Washington is seeking to paralyze Iranians with threats and sanctions, but those measures have turned into opportunities. Raeisi added that the Nicaraguan people's resistance against excessive demands and hegemonic powers has led to their victory. On Monday, Raeisi visited Venezuela, where Tehran and Caracas signed 25 documents aimed at enhancing cooperation in various fields. The Iranian president will next travel to Cuba to meet top officials there. Daniel Shaw is a Latin American expert who joins us from Caracas to tell us more there. Daniel Shaw, welcome. If I was to come up with any questions on my own, it would not serve the justice that the statements made by these two leaders made, because those statements in the form of questions is what I'm going to ask you. First, over to Daniel Ortega, where he called Iran's Islamic Revolution and the revolution there in the past as twin revolutions, where he said the Iranian and Nicaraguan revolutions have deep roots in the fight against the dominance of arrogant powers, especially the U.S.
Yeah, I think this framing is very important. Two revolutions in 1979 against U.S.-sponsored henchmen, the Shah in Iran, Somoza in Nicaragua. Two deeply popular revolutions, the Sandinista Revolution and the Islamic Revolution. And I think this is part of a wider trend. We see Xiomara Castro visiting China. She sustained meetings with Xi Jinping yesterday. Daniel Ortega receiving President Raeisi. These are huge geopolitical shifts. This unity between Asia and Latin America, between the Middle East and South America and the Caribbean, this is really sending shock waves down the spine of U.S. imperialism. They do not want to see this ever-growing unity and integration of the toiling peoples of the world.
When you take a look at some background here, if you can give us about Daniel Ortega. He was the leader of Nicaragua's Sandinista revolution. Tell us a little bit more about that, because that also shows his revolutionary spirit, of which Iran's President Ebrahim Raeisi feels obviously that there's a connection between the two countries based on that history there.
Yeah, Daniel Ortega is definitely a historical figure in the history of Nicaragua, Central America, and the hemisphere. He came up through the ranks of the Sandinistas. He's arguably one of the leaders of the left that's most critiqued across the United States. I think it's important for the left, for the anti-imperialist minded people of the U.S. to be very clear on these things. Certainly, the Sandinista revolution has been no Tea Party. It has not been an easy affair, as the U.S. has continued to stoke the flames of counter-revolution, just like they did in 1980s, though their tactics have changed. But the attempt at an anti-Sandinista coup in 2018 was very bloody against Ortega, against the Sandinistas. They had the right to defend themselves. As many liberals in the United States will never accept this. So ideologically, I think there's a lot of confusion in the United States in terms of why we have to say no more sanctions against Iran nor Nicaragua, no more hybrid war on Nicaragua, and that the Nicaraguan leadership actually presides over many, many different social movements, peasant movements, women's movements that across Nicaragua fight for their food sovereignty and their economic sovereignty and their full political self-determination every day.
And finally, when you talk about, I think you mentioned it, if not, this term has been used quite a bit, especially a lot recently, and that's this New World Order. When you talk about countries like Iran, mainly U.S.-sanctioned countries that talk about how they are pushing back against the U.S. hegemony or against imperialism, or against, for example, how the U.S. has weaponized the dollar, and so forth and so on. There's not a confirmation from the U.S. or a reality check for them that they even acknowledge that this is happening and that they're on the wane, that they're digressing in terms of the influence that they used to wield. Do you think that, except for Janet Yellen, I think said that the dollar is being less consumed and will be less consumed in the years to come. But do you think that the U.S. is going to realize that this is happening, or acknowledge that this is happening, and perhaps want to do something about it, maybe?
The U.S. ruling class, unfortunately, is all too aware, and these are the things that they pay analysts millions and millions of dollars to be on top of 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. Nothing happens in Tehran, nothing happens in Managua, Caracas, La Paz, or Beijing, or Caracas. Right now, we have this massive gathering in support of Alex Saab and all of the political prisoners of empire. And the U.S. is very aware that their economic power is waning, that China unto itself represents a new camp, a new pole for different oppressed countries to build with diplomatic relations. This is the new world order. Russia represents another pole, Iran and Zimbabwe. So the U.S. didn't calculate that the most blockaded, sanctioned countries, the most starved countries, frankly, would end up finding one another in solidifying these trade relationships. So the way that President Raeisi and Daniel Ortega have framed this is that out of incredible hardship and interventions by the U.S., new opportunities in a new world order is being built as we speak.
Thank you very much for that. Daniel Shaw, Latin American expert from Caracas there. Thank you.